Hi everyone, I'm Amber and welcome to my channel, Amber Wallace Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. This was a really exciting month. This is my first month on Booktube, so I was really excited to do a TBR, sort of work through those this month, and I'm really excited to tell you guys what I read and what I think of it. So the first book I read this month was A Court of Mist and Fury, and this book was incredible. I really liked the first one, A Court of Thorn and Roses, but going into the second book in the series, I just know because of her writing style, the books get better and better, and this was no different. This book was maybe the best thing I read all month. Maybe the best thing I read all year. I listened to this one on audiobook, so I visited some friends in Boston earlier this month. So driving from Maine to Boston, I listened to it, and then I was so captured by this book that even when I was in Boston for the extended weekend, supposed to be hanging out with my friends, I could not help but listen to this audiobook every spare second I had. 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait for the third book in this series to come out later this year. The second book I read this month was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This one was also 5 out of 5 stars, an incredible book. I read it in the bookstore all in one sitting. It was that gripping, and I bawled my eyes out in the middle of the bookstore, and I don't even care because the book was that good. And the premise of the book is basically this boy is dealing with his mother's illness, and a monster comes to his window one night and offers to help in sort of an unconventional way. It's a very interesting story. It's absolutely beautiful, and I highly recommend it to anyone of any age. It was amazing. The third book I read this month is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series, which follows Clary Frey, who is thrust into this Shadowhunter world when her mom disappears. I've actually read this book before, but I wanted to get back into this series, so I thought rereading this would be a good place to start because it was a really long time ago that I did read this book. I really enjoyed it, even though it was the second time reading it. My only complaint is that I had just watched the first season of the Shadowhunters series on TV. A lot of the things that happened in the show were fresh in my mind, so reading this after having just watched the show was not ideal. I still love the humor, I still love the story. Very excited to continue this series. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The fourth book I finished this month is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book is basically a retelling of the Iliad from Patroclus' perspective, and in this story, they start out as friends, and then Achilles and Patroclus become lovers, and it's sort of how the story in the Iliad plays out from Patroclus' perspective. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed listening to it. I feel like the narration was absolutely wonderful. I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars. My only complaint is that the ending left a little bit to be desired. So the fifth book that I read this month is different than the one I anticipated reading. So on my TBR, I said I was going to read The Cursed Child. I was really excited to read that one. I had a copy in my TBR video. However, it turned out to be my dad's friend's copy of the book, so I could not bring it to school with me, and I did not get a chance to read it before coming back to school. So instead this month, I read a different play, and I read A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I loved this book. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. It's light, it's a comedy, it was very funny, and overall wonderful. The premise, for those who don't know, the two characters, Lysander and Hermia, are in love with each other, but Hermia's father wants her to marry Demetrius, who is also in love with her, and the fourth lover, Helena, is in love with Demetrius, but he only has eyes for Hermia. And then they sort of run off to the woods together. Fairies are involved, and magical things happen, and it's a comedy, it's Shakespeare, it's wonderful. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The last book I read this month was The Spy by Paulo Coelho. This book follows the life of Mata Hari, who was an exotic dancer in Paris in the 1900s, and in 1917 was wrongly accused of being a spy for the Germans and sentenced to death. This book was one that I was really excited to read, and in all honesty was a little bit let down by. And by a little bit, I mean I was devastatedly let down by this book. And I definitely plan on having a book talk on this because I have a lot of feelings on it. But for now, I will just say I gave it 2 out of 5 stars because I had such high expectations and they really weren't met until the very end of the book. So that's it for the books I read this January. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a huge month for me. It was the first month on Booktube, and I got to all 6 books that I wanted to read, so I'm feeling very accomplished. And honestly, shout out to you guys, because this has been my first month, and I already feel so welcomed in this community. So please hit subscribe, please keep watching my videos, and thank you for all your support. I hope to see you next time. Bye!